I am so intrigued at the fact that you study psychology, criminal psychology at that. That is ironic on so many levels. What was that term you used a little while ago? Abyssophobia? Abyssophobia. Shoot, if I didn't know any better, I would say that's exactly what I have. I've been told that I get a little bipolar, but what the heck do they know? It's like everyone thinks they're experts these days. Let's toast to this new companionship and wish it longevity. I can't get over how beautiful you are.
I could almost take a little piece of you as a trophy.
A serial killer's main attraction to their victim is dominance. No one knows for sure, but it is believed the fear and vulnerability displayed by a victim is an essential source of motivation for a serial killer. You might find yourself researching different templates and early characteristics of a serial killer. However, there is absolutely no way to determine who might one day become a serial killer or how many bodies the friendly face next door has piled up. The definition of a serial killer is an individual who murders a series of victims over a period, typically with gaps between each killing. Some serial killers kidnap and torture their victims prior to murdering them. One might believe a serial killer and a gangbanger with multiple bodies under their belt fall into the same category. However, the two are separated by one word: motive. The definition of motive is a reason for doing something, especially one that is hidden or not obvious. The gangbanger's motive is clear. Their objective is to possess or repossess territory to perpetuate their criminal activities or retaliation in response to an inbound attack on one of their members. A serial killer's motive is far more complicated and at times hard to reveal. In this segment of Eat the Snakes, we will review serial killers and how you avoid being caught in their trap.
Sorry, sir, did you say you wanted a drum with concentrated sulfuric acid? We don't sell that here. Can you provide clarity on what you might be using that on?
George Haigh, aka the English acid bath murderer, born in the district of Lincolnshire, England on July 24, 1909, took the phrase "no body, no case" as a way of life. He has a tally of 6 to 9 bodies. However, 6 is on record and the remaining 3 are unconfirmed. It is believed that John's origin of social miscommunication stems from strict discipline handed to him by his parents, John Robert Haigh, and his wife Emily Haigh when John George was a child. Narcissistic personality disorder, a mental health condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance, explains why the acid bath murderer felt cheated by his more successful peers and felt justified in defrauding them. He had what he thought was the perfect crime, befriending his victims, luring them into a vulnerable position, executes them, then dissolves their bodies by way of acid. His first victim, William Donald McSwan, a wealthy businessman and owner of amusement parlors that Haigh frequently chauffeured for. After a 4-year sentence for fraud, George Haigh is released from prison and gains re-employment from McSwan, but shortly after, on September 6, 1944, Haigh lures William McSwan into a basement, hits William McSwan with a lead pipe, then stuffs William McSwan in a 48-gallon drum full of concentrated sulfuric acid. 2 days after murdering William McSwan, Haigh returns to the basement to find William McSwan's body mostly dissolved. Haigh empties the 40-gallon drum into a manhole and writes a letter to McSwan's parents, Donald and Amy McSwan. The letter states their son had gone into hiding in Scotland to avoid being called up for military service. Haigh also swindles McSwan's parents into letting him take over McSwan's house and began collecting the rent in their son's absence. Donald and Amy become curious as to why their son had not returned as the war was coming to an end, and on July 2, 1945, he lures them to Gloucester Road by telling them their son was back from Scotland for a surprise visit. He murders them in his basement with a lead pipe to the head and disposes of them. Haigh commandeers the McSwan's property and sells for £8,000 and moves into the Onslow Court Hotel in Kensington. Haigh runs into money issues by 1947 and solves this by targeting and murdering another couple, Dr. Archibald Henderson and his wife Rose. Haigh leads the couple to believe he has interest in a house they have for sale. He's invited to the Hendersons' flat by Rose to play the piano for their housewarming party. While at the flat, Haigh steals Archibald Henderson's revolver, planning to use it in his next crime. He rents a small workshop at 2 Leopold Road, Crawley, Sussex, and moves drums of acid there from Gloucester Road. On February 12, 1948, he drives Archibald Henderson to Crawley on the pretext of showing him an invention. When they arrived, Haigh shoots Henderson in the head with his own revolver stolen from the housewarming. He then lures Mrs. Henderson to the workshop, claiming that her husband has fallen ill, then shoots her. After disposing the Hendersons' bodies in oil drums filled with acid, he forges a letter from them and sells all their possessions for £8,000, except for their car and dog, which he keeps. Haigh's final victim is Olive Duran Deacon, 69, the wealthy widow and a fellow resident at the Onslow Court Hotel, solicitor John Duran Deacon. Haigh poses as an engineer and leads Olive to believe he can help her with an idea she has for her artificial fingernails company. Haigh invites Olive down to the Leopold Road workshop on February 18, 1949 and, once inside, he shoots her in the back of the neck with the .38 caliber Webley revolver that he had stolen from Archibald Henderson, strips her of her valuables, including a Persian lamb coat, and gives her an acid bath. 2 days later, Duran Deacon's friend Constance Lane reports her missing and detectives soon discover evidence of Haigh's theft and fraud and searches the workshop. They find a case containing a dry cleaner's receipt for Mrs. Duran Deacon's coat and papers referring to the Hendersons and McSwans. The workshop in Sussex rented by Haigh did not contain a floor drain, unlike the workshop he had rented at Gloucester Road in London. He, therefore, disposed of the remains by pouring out the container on a rubble pile at the back of the Crawley property. Investigation of the area by pathologist Keith Simpson reveals 28 pounds of human body fat, part of a human foot, human gallstones, and part of a denture which was later identified by Mrs. Duran Deacon's dentist during the trial. Haigh asked Detective Inspector Albert Webb during questioning, "Tell me, frankly, what are the chances of anybody being released from Broadmoor, a high-security psychiatric hospital?" The inspector states he could not discuss that sort of thing, so Haigh replied, "Well, if I told you the truth, you would not believe me. It sounds too fantastic to believe." He then confesses that he killed Duran Deacon, the McSwans, and the Hendersons. He goes to trial and pleads insanity, claiming that he had drunk the blood of his victims. He said he had dreams dominated by blood as a young boy. When he was involved in a car accident in March 1944, his dream returned to him. "I saw before me a forest of crucifixes which gradually turned into trees. At first, there appeared to be dew or rain, dripping from the branches, but as I approached, I realized it was blood. The whole forest began to writhe and the trees, dark and erect, to ooze blood. A man went from each tree catching the blood. When the cup was full, he approached me. 'Drink,' he said, but I was unable to move." The Attorney General, Sir Hartley Shawcross, urges the jury to reject Haigh's defense of insanity because he had acted with malice aforethought. Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, defending, called many witnesses to attest to Haigh's mental state, who claims Haigh had a paranoid constitution, adding, "The absolute callous, cheerful, bland and almost friendly indifference of the accused to the crimes which he freely admits having committed is unique in my experience." Haigh apparently had believed, mistakenly, that if the bodies of his victims could not be found, a murder conviction would not be possible. He is found guilty. It only takes minutes for the verdict. Mr. Justice Humphreys sentences Haigh to death, and on August 10, 1949, the acid bath murderer is hung.
Are you just kinda hanging around? Or do you plan on buying anything? Anyway, we have sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, nitric acid, carbonic acid. Let me know when to stop. Formic acid, acetic acid, citric acid, acetylsalicylic acid.